Hello and welcome to this edition of the A2Pcast. We're talking about video game price points. Why are they all $60? Why aren't they $40? Why aren't they $100? We're going to get into that. I'm Mike Rifenbury, the editor of Alive to Play. With me is Josh Hartman, one of our writers, and Mike Schupsky, another one of our writers. Before we get started, I had a surprise for you guys. I told Josh. Guess what today is the anniversary of?
I really thought this was going to be a striptease.
Well, it's not a striptease. It's even better than that. Any ideas?
Anniversary.
Yeah. What's the today? We're recording, by the way, on the 17th of
November 17th.
November 17th. Is it a game?
I think I wore my favorite sweater this day last year.
Well, I was just going to say that you had worn your...
I wore my turtleneck last year.
It's the Star Wars Holiday Special. It's 35 years old today.
Oh.
35.
That's such a strange anniversary to celebrate, but I like it.
But it's beautiful, right?
7 times 5.
35 years young. Oh my goodness.
Hasn't aged a day.
No. Still the same piece of crap that it was 35 years ago.
Why did the Christmas special come out November 17th?
That's a great question that I don't have an answer to.
Well, it started the trend of getting Christmas shit out there.
Christmas before Thanksgiving. George Lucas did it.
Star Wars blazing the trail there. That's how Walmart got that idea. Hey, we should put our Christmas shit out.
Because they remembered.
He's a businessman first.
Yes.
35 years ago.
Truly.
You saw Walmart with all their Christmas shit out and said, hey, I should get my Christmas special out now.
Well, anyway, Happy birthday to the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Yay,
we'll post a link on our page here. You can go you can go back and watch some of that. The beautiful song at the end.
Relive the dream.
That amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, the dream, we'll call it. All right, so getting into our topic for today, video game price points. So we've been looking over some data where video game prices have been in the past since about the mid-'70s. And especially with the systems, you see systems, when adjusted for inflation, are incredibly expensive. Almost $1,000, we're talking about for a very simple piece of hardware. And the games do fluctuate over time, but they've been $60 or so for about the last decade.
It's important to point out how expensive they were, like 20 years ago.
The games themselves, you mean?
Yeah, like Atari games. Like we looked this up. A $20 game back then was like, I'm gonna say $60 in this equivalence, but like about $40, and then like a $40 game was like almost $80.
Right. Adjusted for inflation, these games were incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
I think we were looking, and we can link to this as well. We were looking, and one article we were reading said that at its height of the surveying that they did, I believe, what was it? Schupsky, Street Fighter 3, Street Fighter 2?
I think it was 3. Yeah.
And then one of the early Final Fantasies.
No, maybe it was Final Fantasy 3.
Either way, one of the early Final Fantasies, one of the early Street Fighters, they were retailing for, in today's dollars, $120 a copy. Mm-hmm. Which is just incredible. Yeah. It's so expensive for a game.
I'm nodding my head in shock and approval.
Yes.
It's insane to think that a game, in today's standards, would cost that. Like, Jesus, you could get a Wii for $120 nowadays. It's
like you can get 2 Wiis for $120. Are you kidding?
It's insane.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
And so I think there's an interesting thing to think about here when you consider the sort of experience that games today offer as compared to games of yesteryear. You have games that you can, not to say that you can't play really early sort of Super Nintendo games or even Atari games for hours and hours and hours. I'm sure people did, but the ability to do that in a more natural way, something that offers you, like Skyrim, which, for example, that offers you several hundred hours of gameplay, and it's all unique gameplay. Yeah. It's not a repetitive, not necessarily a repetitive experience.
It's a dynamic, and like we talk about immersion a lot. Like
we're big on immersion.
Yeah, we're big on immersion, but like yeah, like games have gotten substantially better, not just graphically wise, but like better. And to think that a game of 20 years ago cost a shit ton more than Skyrim is kind of hard to believe.
Yeah.
I think it's also smart to point out that the production budgets for these games have been increased dramatically, especially in the last decade. And I think it's also that has increased the stress on studios for them to make solid products.
Mhm.
And I think even led to this culture where we have annual releases of the same sort of thing every single year. So you have Assassin's Creed, you have Call of Duty, you have now Need for Speed, that's an annual release now. Right, of course, all the sports titles get annual releases, and people pay $60
Yep.
every single year
Yep.
for them. And, I mean, you can debate whether or not they're actually worth $60, to pay for something that is made every year. But it's just the point that studios are, I think, more afraid to take risks than they ever have been because it's so expensive. It's so dangerous financially to take a risk. And I think we've had in the last decade or so, a lot of studios close.
Companies have been dropping like flies.
Right, closed because, and it's not even that they took a risk. It's just that they had something that didn't sell quite as well as their parent company or a publisher desired, and that was it.
Sometimes that profit margin is like razor thin, and if you're like on the wrong, just one,
if you're on the wrong edge of the razor, that's it. You're done.
1% off, like your company will go bankrupt, and it's like and it gives birth to this sequelitis tendency of like we have to have a hit every year. We have to have a sure thing moneymaker every year to stay afloat, basically. Like you think of like EA being a mega conglomerate, but like their ability to go under is still very, very real. Just by again, we've seen so many big companies. I wouldn't say like as big as EA, but like just companies that before like were.
But EA owns a lot of different things.
That's true.
They I think they are a publisher first.
Yeah,
they kind of control.
And this is where
all of these
where we're moving towards. Like you're getting these big conglomerates, like big three. I would see of EA, 2K, and Activision. Yeah, where they either vacuum up all the smaller ones or they crush them. So like. It's a bleak perspective, but it's kind of true. It's like
but is it bleak? I mean, so on the one hand, you have the oligopoly of these really large publishing companies that sort of own everything, and then on the other hand, you have indie development, which I think has a very bright future. At least it seems at the moment, especially because they are utilizing varied price points. And I think that helps a lot, especially when you consider that they don't have to worry about physical distribution in many cases. These are people who are releasing on the App Store or the Marketplace, or just you can download it through their own servers, but you don't have to worry about sending it out and having it pressed to a disc and getting the boxes and shipping them up to retailers. You don't have to worry about physical inventory. And I think that saves them a lot of money and
definitely saves them a lot of money. Saves them, just get it to the video game player as quickly as possible. Like let the cards lie. But in terms of the bigger companies, it is a definite upward trend of how much it costs to make games. Like we looked this up. I think Doom from the 1993. 1993 cost $200,000 in 1993 dollars. In 2013 dollars, that's still only about $324,000.
And granted, keep in mind this is a small group of people making something in like I believe it was like a shitty trailer or something, with pizza boxes and Diet Coke cans littering the floor. And broken keyboards. This is a small aside, but if you're looking for a great book, read Masters of Doom. David Kushner, I believe, is the author. It's fantastic, and it's all about John Romero and John Carmack and the genesis of id. And you can read all about this stuff. It's just amazing and inspiring. But back into this, so Doom was incredibly inexpensive to make, even, by today's standards. I mean, people do Kickstarters for this kind of money.
Mm-hmm. But we've definitely seen an upward trend in terms of, granted, it's different in terms of, like, these are real professional studios with, like, real big offices and everyone does professional work. But a 2010 study showed that an average video game nowadays, a AAA title, mind you, release costs about $28 million to produce, which is huge. Like, movies don't cost that much to produce.
Well, I think most major pictures do.
Big blockbuster movies, yes, but, like, I'm just thinking of, like, even mid-level movies cost about $20 million on average.
You mean like things with Adam Sandler in it?
Yes, exactly.
Adam Sandler looks like feels like a $20 million guy.
Yeah, it's all about.
If the $20 million was covered in shit.
Yeah. Well done.
Although, to be fair, that's probably about accurate for a movie he does, and the majority of that money probably goes to him.
I mean,
we're not really talking about production costs.
I'm pretty sure
it's Adam Sandler.
I'm pretty sure his price tag is $20 million, if I had to guesstimate. To stand there in a t-shirt and say shitty lines and yell.
Like
do something like, "Wow!" Something like that.
And just yell like an idiot and, okay, I'm done. Where's my $20 million? But anyway.
We live in a fucked up world.
But anyway, $28 million per game is, still pretty substantial. Like, it makes it it makes it a really risky roll of the dice for just an average video game.
But think about this. I mean, if Black Ops 2, we couldn't find any really solid numbers on this, but we found a bunch of sources that estimated about $28 million for development costs, not including marketing, but about $28 million went into the production of Black Ops 2. So if you're considering that they dropped $28 million into the studio and said, 12 months, make us a game, and contrast that with how much money Call of Duty is making these people,
mm-hmm.
I mean, the profit margin there is massive. It's so big. I think it's pretty common knowledge that the gaming industry is many times larger than even the film industry.
Yeah.
I think some people are surprised by that, but it really is
recession-proof.
Apparently so. Yeah, it powered through these past few years unscathed for the most part, with the exception of the studio closures. But I think that's an unrelated topic.
But people still bought games. People still bought consoles. People still played games.
Right. I mean,
in the long run scheme of things, games are, for as expensive as they are as a single purchase, they're still a lot cheaper. Staying home on Friday night and playing a whole bunch of Skyrim with a bag of chips is a lot cheaper than going downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you do it multiple Friday nights. My God, the game pays for itself in a month.
Well, it's true. Well, even when you consider Mike Schupsky, you wrote, this was actually the genesis for my thoughts about doing this topic, is that you wrote a piece for us this week, actually, about DLC and sort of hours to dollars, right? Because people are sort of, well, I mean, you could just, give us a rundown.
Oh, well, the article started from the complaints people were making at Burial at Sea, the new DLC out, about the length of it. It's
for Bioshock Infinite.
For Bioshock Infinite. And I just wanted to see if that criticism was warranted. So I just did a comparison of, like, if you take how long it is to how much it costs, and you broke it down into its essentials, how much money would you spend per hour of content? And I found out that it's pretty much exactly the same amount of content per dollar that you got with Bioshock Infinite. It's like exactly the same almost.
Mm-hmm.
It's about $6 per hour of content. So, like, I just said, like, if you're getting the same amount of content for a downloadable content DLC than you are for the main game, like, what's the real complaint here? But I see where you're going with this, and, like, other games like Skyrim, I mean, I would venture to say it's like 2 cents per hour of content if you would like
I mean,
get
it's,
into it.
It's
like
true,
crazy.
and that's why I have said before. I think we should have varying price points for different sorts of games. I think your typical first-person shooter. I mean, I think we have a weird understanding. I think they're honestly in a kind of a nebulous spot at the moment. I think at least what I would like to see in the future. I don't know if it'll actually happen, but what I would like to see is just dropping the single-player campaigns from the Call of Duty and the Battlefield. No one buys it for the single-player campaign. It just isn't. No. No one cares about that Michael Bay movie, 6-hour-long nonsense thing. People go for the multiplayer. So just make a multiplayer game. Make a multiplayer-only experience. And if you're going to include 5 maps with it, then maybe it's a $30 or a $40 game, and you sell the map packs as you do now. You can buy them. You can buy all of them for $50, or you can buy them individually for $15. However you want to do that, that's fine. But just say, like, here's the basic multiplayer experience with these upgrades, and you can have your map packs later on. But an experience like Skyrim, even the base game is hundreds of hours long. I mean, I think that's worth more than $60. I would pay more than $60 for Skyrim because it's so much bigger than like a first-person shooter.
You're going to get your money's worth within the first, some people, a week or 3 days of playing the game.
Right. I mean, when I bought Skyrim, I did nothing but play Skyrim. It was like 16 hours a day for like 3 days in a row. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I spent so much time playing Skyrim when it first came out, and I still do. I still play so much Skyrim.
Yeah, you still see it in your pile and you say, "Oh, it's time to play Skyrim."
Time to play Skyrim. I feel like Skyrim. It's a Skyrim day.
It's a Skyrim day.
Those words and leave my lips so frequently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I understand your point in that, but this is another thing that we talk about in terms of length of content compared to quality of content.
That's true.
I would still pay $60 for BioShock Infinite. Would you pay $80 for BioShock Infinite?
I think that gets into, knowing what I know about the game, having experienced the entirety of the story. Absolutely. Going into it, probably absolutely as well, but say I'm average Joe consumer, probably not.
Yeah, I think average Joe...
all else being the same.
I think average Joe would Google it and see that it's about 10 hours worth of content. And would say,
right. And it's difficult to kind of equate time with
it's also
worth.
Difficult. It's also difficult because BioShock Infinite cost pretty much as much as Skyrim to make. I think the estimate was someone said 200 million. I don't think that's true, but
that does seem high.
Easily could have broken the $100 million threshold. It costs just as much to make as Skyrim, so they both have to sell at essentially the same price point. So it gets into this weird thing. If it's only a single player game, why don't you just bump it down to 30? Well, for BioShock Infinite, that's not really possible, because they spent so much time working on this and it costs so much money. It wouldn't be fair to Irrational to force them to sell it for $30. You know what I mean?
That's a really good point, and something that I don't think I had given as much consideration to, because I don't know. I guess I sort of equated in my mind a short experience with one that doesn't necessarily take a lot of time.
To make, right?
Yeah,
but
again, for BioShock Infinite, that is the case.
It's all about the onus. I wrote in my article a little thing the onus, because it's such a short game. It's so it needs to be great, and it is great.
Yeah,
but the fact that it's so short to make and yet short to play, but it took so long to make. It's you still have to charge it that $60 price tag.
Yeah,
so
right.
You get then we get into the weird territory of is the content worth $60? And that's all the quality of content is a weird thing to get into, because it all comes down to whether you like the game or not.
Yeah, I think the term is subjective.
Yeah, very subjective terms, and subjective isn't the way to go. Usually the way to go for to price. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. Like to price something is Bioshock Infinite worth $30, $60, or $80?
Well, but see, I think that has to be up to whoever's making the money off of it, and I think that's a good segue into briefly indie stuff and the varying price points. And I think there's a lot of economics wrapped up in that too. Is if you can get your game on the App Store and make a really simple, fun experience that you're going to want to come back to and keep playing, and you charge 99 cents for it, well, one copy at 99 cents is 99 cents. You're not making a lot of money. But 1,000 copies is almost $1,000. A million copies is almost $1 million. And, if you are selling hundreds of thousands or millions of copies of this tiny little game to the consumer, no one even thinks about 99 cents. That's the change sitting on the bottom of your desk, or that's nothing at all.
It's a little blip in your balance, PNC balance.
Yeah, right. No one cares about that. But if you can make an experience that is, fun enough, worth their 99 cents, if it's worth 99 cents to them, then why not? And so I think you can build that theory out a little bit more and say, well, then what must we give someone for them to spend $6.99 or $9.99 on like an iPad game or an iPhone game, like Infinity Blade? Infinity Blade is
I think it's still like $7.
Yeah, something like $7. And I mean, we didn't really prep for this. I don't know how many that sold. I imagine it has to be many, many, many copies. It's incredibly popular, and it's and they can turn them around very quickly. And of course, you have to at a price point like $7. But I also can't imagine the team making it is all that large.
I wouldn't think so.
I mean, I would assume they're still making very good margins on this game. Again, especially because they don't have to worry about physical distribution. They're putting it on the App Store, and then people are downloading it off Apple servers. And Apple takes their cut, and then Chair gets, their profit.
I agree that it helps that these indie developers have a relatively small development team, so the profits are shared more evenly. And like, if you have a mega hit game, like, it's going to make you millions of dollars, of course. But
when you're dealing with a large company or something like that, or a large studio, everyone gets their piece of the pie.
Mincing out pieces of the pie. But I really like your point about indie games are really flexible in how they price their games, and in a way the AAA titles can't be. Like $60 it's like we talked about it before. It's almost like a collusion of like all these companies. They've agreed $60. You're not going over it. If you go to 65, fuck you. You can't do that.
You're out of the club.
You just can't do that, all right? You can't do it. But like indie games, like they can say, our game is a 99-cent game, or our game is a $3 game, our game is a $10 game.
There really is no standard.
There's no standard
for indie games.
It's purely based on the content. And I think that's exactly where it needs to go. Right,
and I think it's really smart, because then you as a developer or a producer can sort of determine your needs. Like, okay, well, how many team members do we have? And you can think about, well, if we price it at $1, it will probably sell this many copies. If we price it at $10, it'll sell fewer copies, but maybe that'll, we'll be making so much more money that it won't matter.
And because they're if they set out to say, okay, we're going to make a 99-cent game, like it's not a high priority. Just like put Steve and Bob on this job. Whereas, okay, we're making a $10 game. It's a little bit more production.
Yeah,
we're getting everyone involved. Like with a AAA game, everyone in the team is responsible for making it, regardless of what the size of the game is, what the content is, what the game is going to be like. Everyone has, like, it's this big production no matter what, and it's going to be $60 no matter what. So, like, it's so rigid. But in indie games, it's very, they can adjust as to what the game requires. So, I like that point that you made about the varying price structures. I didn't think about that.
Ooh, we're all learning things.
Last thoughts, General?
Digital distribution for AAA games, I think, is something to watch and see if companies will be more flexible in terms of price structure for AAA games.
We're not going to drop the price.
No, but of course
they might be flexible going up.
Yes, but I mean, as we've said, would that be such a bad thing? I mean, would it be so bad? I mean, it would look bad to have a digital distribution that's cheaper to make, all in all, and going to say, okay, we're going to bump it up to $80. but the idea, but also as we found out, $60 isn't that much for a game anyway nowadays. I mean,
well, relative to what has been in the past.
Relative to what has been in the past. But will AAA big title games, once they go to digital, have the ability to fluctuate between prices as the game calls for? That's what I would like to see.
That could be interesting. I also think about maybe, I mean, could it just be that we, and this is totally outlandish theory, but could it just be that we have become so good at manufacturing Blu-rays and DVDs that producing them at a high rate is so inexpensive, whereas producing cartridge games that have to meet certain criteria for certain consoles, they have to be shaped a certain way or fit in a certain port. Doing that and the plastic and molding all this stuff and the chips, that is so much more expensive. So it isn't actually development cost that's eating up all of that money. It's in fact the cost of making the cartridge itself and the packaging and the shipping and all of that. I mean, I have no idea, but
it was a very multi-step process for cartridges.
I think it's probably the world is a much better place now that we've gotten rid of plastic cartridges.
It's still the 3DS.
Well, for kids,
but
no.
Who gives a shit?
I mean, you say that.
Millions of people.
3DS last year, or earlier this year, for 3 months in a row, was the best-selling console.
Yeah.
Of all consoles.
Yeah, well.
You might not give a shit, but people do.
They still make it so kids can't break them.
And the 2DS. Gotta watch out for the wedge of cheese.
Gotta watch out for that wedge of cheese. It's or that axe if you put it on the end of a stick.
Yeah, you could put your 2DS on the end of a stick.
Why would you do that?
To behead yourself.
Because you want a 2DS? That's a good plan.
So you could mash it into the ground and say, away with you, 2DS. I'm done with you.
Excellent.
Wedge of cheese.
So that's all for this topic today. Check out the things we've posted. We're gonna post links to all the things we talked about on this edition. Read Mike Schupsky's piece about the DLC. We will be posting things pretty much daily from here on out. The website is now live. We're going to keep making improvements to that, make it better. We're also reformatting our A2Pcast a little bit, as you might have noticed. We're having them broken up by topic. We'll be posting a couple of those a week. 2 or 3, I think, is what is going to work out to there. And give us your feedback. We definitely want to know what you guys think of it. So thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.